Sakshi.
I'm Muskan, and today we are going to watch China gets too close to US fighter jet, and then this happened. So what just happened? Because we know that China and US are somewhere the rivals, and they are both of them are like very superior in terms of technology, in terms of weapons. So we want to watch why that jet was coming so close to US jet. So let's watch this video.
A Chinese radar operator on the Shandong coast picked up 10 F-16s crossing the Korean coastline westbound. Three
Westbound.
altitude blocks, single heading, American jets out of Osan. Doing
Oh.
what American jets have done in this part of the world for 70 years. The duty officer hit the scramble order and rolled 6 J-16s off the flight line to handle
What
it.
were US jets
Unknown
doing
to those
there?
J-16 pilots climbing out of Shandong with PL-15s on the rails, they weren't about to intercept a strike package. They were about to fly into a geometry problem that no amount of missile range could solve.
Oh.
12 minutes later, the Chinese 6-ship formation was through 20,000 feet in a tight wedge and climbing hard toward the F-16 formation, pushing
Oh.
west
Both were
across
clashing
international
towards each other.
waters.
Yes.
18 minutes after the scramble, the lead Chinese pilot had a missile-quality lock on Viper 1 at 140 kilometers. The J-16's ASA, a radar that aims electronically
ASA.
instead of mechanically,
Electronically.
jumping between
Wow,
targets
that's
faster than a human
very
can
nice.
blink, held the track solid. Closure rate 900 knots, 1,000 miles an hour of airspace eaten between them, fire control solution lit. He's got Viper 1 cold. The F-16 formation didn't react as the lock held for 10 seconds, then 20, then 30.
Yeah,
10 seconds
why?
is when most pilots break. 20
yes.
is when even disciplined pilots start asking questions over the formation freak. 30 is when the brigade calls the wing commander and the wing commander calls a senator. Viper 1 didn't break, didn't transmit, didn't twitch.
Why?
He just kept flying west, like the J-16 lead's missile quality lock was a weather report. Viper 1's radar warning receiver was screaming inside the cockpit, a high-pitched warble pitch to make a man's hair stand up. And his thumb hovered an inch over the chat button.
Why is he
the
not
switch
even,
that dumps
like,
clouds of
transmitting?
metallic strips to confuse incoming radar without committing. His wingmen were holding altitude and heading like they couldn't hear a thing. The J-16 lead can't decide whether the Americans don't see him or just don't care. He has range advantage, missile advantage, and a KJ-500 AEW bird watching the whole picture from inside Chinese airspace and
So
feeding
they
him
wanted
tracks.
them to
The
be,
KJ-500
visible.
is
Yeah.
orbiting 200 kilometers
Okay.
behind the engagement at 30,000 feet.
But
Think of
US
it as a
jets were
blind
like,
security
we don't
camera
care.
mounted
Do
above
whatever
the
you
entire
want to do.
battlefield, watching
Yellow
every
sea?
blip on a screen the size of a dining room table and feeding that picture to every Chinese fighter in the air. Its surveillance radar is painting a picture nobody on the J-16 side has any reason to doubt. 10 F-16s, 3 altitude blocks, single heading, closure rate 900 knots.
900
The
knots.
Chinese AEW operator has called this exact picture before in 20 exercises against Chinese aggressor squadrons. He's
Oh.
never called it against the real thing. The J-16 lead tightens the lock, pushes the throttles forward, and closes to 100 kilometers, expecting the Americans to break and run. They
Wow.
don't. The lock holds, and the Americans keep flying west like he isn't even there. What just locked Viper 1? The Shenyang J-16, China's heavyweight strike fighter. A Russian flanker airframe with Chinese ASA bolted to the nose and 12 hard points loaded for bear.
Bear.
PL-15s on the rails and a brochure that promises 5th-generation performance from what's basically a 1988 Camaro with a Tesla dashboard. The radar in its nose is substantially bigger than the ASA in the F-16's nose. Detection range past 250 kilometers, dozens of targets on the scope at once. What's riding under its wings? The BL-15. China's longest-reaching air-to-air missile. Dual-pulse rocket motor that fires once to launch and again to
Wow.
sprint. Like a drag racer hitting the nitrous right before the finish line. Burnout speed past Mach 4, range of 200 kilometers. Boston to Baltimore covered in under 3 minutes.
Boston to
the
Baltimore.
secret is its own little ASA radar that goes active inside the last 30 kilometers, meaning the missile stops needing the launch jet once it's close enough to smell the target. 20-kilogram blast fragmentation warhead, and there's nothing on the F-16 that outranges it. On paper, this is the most dangerous beyond visual range package the PLA Air Force has ever fielded. On
really?
paper, the math on this engagement is decided before it starts. The J-16 sees first, locks first, and shoots first. The Chinese pilot is flying this engagement on paper. The Americans aren't. Look at the J-16 lead's scope at 90 kilometers. His radar refresh paints something his scope didn't show at 140 a minute earlier.
Yeah.
The
Now
F-16
what?
formation isn't stacked at one altitude. 4 contacts are at 34,000 feet. 4 contacts at
kilometers.
28,000 feet. And 2 more
Okay.
contacts
Four,
trail
four,
low
and 2.
at 22,000 feet. 12,000 feet of vertical separation
So
across
many
40
jets.
kilometers of lateral spread. 10 contacts arrayed through 3 altitude blocks like a thrown handful of sand. The Chinese pilot has a clean lock on one of those 10 contacts and a search track on 6 of the others. The 2 low ones are barely on his scope at all.
Oh, yeah.
The 2 low contacts, Outlaw, were tucked against the Yellow Sea at 22,000 feet, where the J-16's look-down radar had to fight sea clutter to hold them. Sea clutter is what happens when a radar tries to pick a fighter out of the wave reflections coming off the water below. Like trying to hear a single conversation in a stadium. The Chinese radar wasn't choosing to ignore Outlaw, it couldn't see them clean. The F-16 formation he thought was a strike package is, in fact, a trap with 3 jaws, and he just walked his nose into the middle one. That spread isn't an accident. The J-16's ASA at this range can't electronically scan vertically through the entire stack at once. The
Oh.
radar has to mechanically tilt the antenna, and at 90 kilometers, the tilt resolution is barely good enough to separate contacts 6,000 feet apart. The Americans just doubled that, and the J-16 lead's radar is going to spend the next 30 seconds trying to decide which altitude block to commit to.
Yes.
The J-16 lead does the only thing he can do. He widens his radar beam to scan the whole stack of altitudes at once. And the lock on Viper 1 craters. The narrow beam track that gave him the missile quality solution 30 seconds ago vaporizes, replaced by volume surge
vaporizes.
across the entire
Straight
spread.
away.
Somewhere in this cockpit, the most expensive radar in the PLA Air Force inventory just got embarrassed by basic geometry. Imagine trying to watch 3 floors of a building through a single window. You can see one
Yes.
floor clearly, but the other 2 require you to physically move. And the Americans just put fighters on all 3 floors. The J-16 lead had 2 options: stay narrow on one target and miss the rest, or widen out and lose his shot. But he had no
Whoa.
choice but to widen. The J-16 lead's fire control radar just lost a fight with high school physics, and he hadn't even fired a missile yet. The
Okay.
Americans noticed the second the lock dropped, and Viper 1 keys the radio once. 9 clicks come back across the formation in 2 seconds, and Viper pushes forward. Shadow banks south. Outlaw holds heading. The geometry just got harder for the Chinese pilots trying to track everyone at once.
Yes.
The
Very
J-16
tough.
lead's radar can still solve it, and his wingman's radars can hold the picture too. But nobody on the Chinese side fixes that geometry without burning energy doing it. At 70 kilometers, the J-16 lead made his decision. He'd been chasing this American formation for 4 minutes without a clean lock, and his patience was gone. Nose up 20 degrees.
But why were they
afterburners
doing
lit
this?
across
What's the
all
purpose?
6 aircraft in the
like
wedge.
to
scare
just
them?
Climbing hard
just
for
to appear.
34,000 feet
Yeah.
to
I don't
engage
know.
the high force ship before they could split any further.
There's
His
nothing going on
wingmen
between
followed
US
in a
and
loose trail.
China.
China,
Six
yes.
Chinese fighters with throttles forward, climbing fast, burning fuel for altitude. The J-16 lead was doing exactly what his training taught him. Engage the closest threat first. Standard intercept doctrine. Run the way Beijing wrote it in the manual. Textbook stuff. He closed to 50 kilometers and started working his radar back into a firing solution on the lead F-16.
Again.
High element of the F-16 saw the climb start before the J-16's nose came up. The first indication arrived in Viper 1's cockpit a full 20 seconds before any tracking radar return would have shown the climb in progress. Viper 1 banked 60 degrees right, held altitude at 34,000 feet, and pushed his throttle forward to military power without lighting his own afterburner.
Okay.
Viper 1 is flying the F-16C Block 70 you see here.
Fighting Falcon.
America's last single-engine fighter, Mach 2. Combat radius 550 nautical miles. Seattle to San Francisco.
Whoa.
ASA in the nose, helmet-mounted cueing, and an EW suite that listens to every Chinese radar on the same
Wow.
frequency the J-16 transmits on.
Oh,
The
wow.
jet is built to do exactly what it's told. Viper 2,
This is so
3,
useful.
and 4 followed his lead and matched the maneuver across the foreship. The
Whoa.
foreship spread across 2 miles of sky and accelerated to Mach 0.95, a mile of airspace every 5 seconds, just under the speed of sound in level flight. The J-16s, still climbing through 31,000 feet, watched their closure rate stop on the tactical display, then watched it reverse and start running negative. Located here on the F-16's nose is the APG-83 Sabre radar. a
Oh.
scaled-down ASA that fits
Every
inside
nose
the
has every different
F-16's
features.
smaller nose
Wow.
cone. Think of it as a compact sports car versus the J-16's
Oh.
full-size
Oh.
SUV.
Compact sports car.
Smaller
Versus
dish,
an
shorter
SUV.
detection range, but the same electronic scanning technology that lets it jump between targets without physically moving. But what gave Viper 1 his 20-second head start wasn't his own radar at all. It was the EW suite below his cockpit, essentially a set of ears that listens to every radar signal in the sky the way a police scanner picks up radio chatter.
Wow.
It had been eavesdropping on the J-16 lead's
Whoa.
fire control radar since the first lock at 140 meters.
That
When the
happened.
J-16 pitched his nose up and committed to the chase, his radar's tracking pattern shifted to keep the lock through the climb. That shift hit Viper 1's RWR seconds before any tracking return would have shown the climb in progress. The Chinese radar that was supposed to be hunting Viper 1 spent the climb broadcasting the J-16 lead's every move in real time to the very formation it was hunting. What just
Yeah.
happened in those 3 minutes is the oldest math in air combat.
What?
Energy is altitude plus airspeed, and you only get it from one place, the engine. Think of it like a
Engine.
bank
Okay.
account. Climbing spends
Okay.
it, diving earns it back.
Wow.
And afterburner? That's a credit card with a 40% interest rate.
Okay,
the
so he
J-16s
dived in.
just maxed out the card chasing the target the Americans wouldn't let them reach. The F-16 spent theirs extending level at military power, never lighting the afterburner. The J-16 lead climbed because his training said engage the closest threat first. He just spent his fuel margin on a chase the F-16s never had to match. At
Wow,
34,000
what a
feet,
move.
with the J-16 still climbing toward them, and Viper 1 through 4 holding at Mach .95 in a 4-ship line abreast, Viper 1 keyed 2 clicks on the formation radio, the bracket. Viper 3 and Viper 4 broke left toward the south. Viper 1 and Viper 2 broke right
Whoa.
toward the north. 2 pairs going in opposite directions at 90 degrees of bank, pulling 5 Gs at maximum rate turn, 6 negative degrees of pitch to gain energy through the descent. Inside Viper 1's cockpit, the G-suit clamped down on his legs and his vision tunneled briefly to a gray pinprick. 4 American fighters executing in lockstep across 2 miles of sky. No radio call, no command needed. Every pilot in the formation already knew his job before Viper 1 keyed the click. The bracket forces the question every fighter pilot in the J-16 formation was about to face. Which
Oh.
half do you chase? It's the
Which?
oldest trick in the book. Like 2 kids running opposite directions from a babysitter. You can only chase one, and the other one's raiding the cookie jar. Pick wrong, and the other half flanks you. Pick right, and you've still given up half the engagement. There's no good answer. The J-16 lead had a quarter of a second to make a decision. The J-16 lead's radar saw 4 targets become 2 pairs in the same refresh cycle. He
Oh.
picked the closer pair, Viper 1's element to the north, because that's what the book
And
said
about
to
to
do when a
surround
formation
them
splits in
from
front
all
of you.
the sides.
His
Yeah.
wingmen followed him into the right turn, and the left pair
It'll
went
definitely
uncontested
confuse
for
the
the next
radar.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
The book worked perfectly. The book had also been written by people who never flew against an air force that wrote its own books. You
Wow.
didn't see the actual problem
Nice.
yet. The left pair was climbing higher and arcing wider on a long sweeping turn. He couldn't track them through his right turn because they were already outside his radar cone. He focused on Viper 1's pair instead, closer to his nose, lower than his altitude, inside his radar volume. The threat he could see was the bait. The threat he couldn't see was already settling in behind him.
Whoa.
12,000 feet below the engagement, Outlaw had pushed throttles forward and pulled the nose up. 2 F-16s trading airspeed for altitude on a zoomed climb out of 22,000. The same trick a roller coaster uses, banking speed at the bottom of the track to spend it on height at the top. They were climbing into a piece of sky no Chinese radar was looking at, the low element popping up behind the fight while the enemy stared at the high group. Every U.S. fighter pilot learns the move at flight school. Nobody on the Chinese side was looking down to catch it. At 11:07 local time, 2 F-16s sit in the J-16 formation's deep 6 o'clock at 36,000 feet, 30 kilometers back and 2,000 feet above.
Oh.
Inside Outlaw 1's
Now
cockpit,
what?
the only sound is the steady hum of the engine and the soft whisper of his own breath through the oxygen mask. Radar in
yeah.
standby, AMRAAMs in priority firing slot. The controlled stillness of a hunter waiting for the prey to turn its back the rest of the way. The J-16 lead doesn't know they're there, and none of his wingmen do either. 6 Chinese fighters with the most expensive radars in the PLA Air Force inventory, and not one of them is looking the right direction. The trap closed 7 minutes ago, and nobody on the Chinese side has even noticed. What just happened to the Chinese formation has a name in fighter aviation. Check
What?
6 failure. Six
Oh.
men staring out the same windshield, like a row of cars driving on the same
Whoa.
highway with nobody checking the rear view. To check the 6, somebody has to physically turn his aircraft around or twist his neck behind his shoulder. Nobody
Oh.
did. And that's how a pair of F-16s ends up in the firing position behind J-16s without firing a shot. Viper 1's pair held the bait.
Wow.
They flew nose on to the J-16 formation, refusing to brake, refusing to descend, holding altitude at 34,000 feet with airspeed pegged at Mach 0.95.
Back at it.
The J-16 lead pressed in to 60 kilometers, then 50, then 40 across the next
30.
60 seconds of the closure. At 40 kilometers, he had clean fire control geometry on the lead F-16, and his fuel state ticked over into amber on the right gauge. He could shoot if this were combat, but he couldn't sustain another hard maneuver if it wasn't.
Oh.
The Americans flying nose on into a J-16 with
Ha.
DL-15s on the rails had to know what they were betting, and they were betting on a Chinese pilot blinking first. Spoiler, the Chinese pilot blinked first.
Haha, we
His wingmen
knew
weren't
it.
just trailing the lead. Each of them was holding his own lock on a different F-16 in Shadow's middle force ship at 28,000 feet, doing the same work the lead was doing on Viper. 6 J-16s, 8 nose-on F-16s spread between Viper and Shadow. Every
Whoa.
Chinese radar in the formation committed forward. Nobody had bandwidth left for the 2 contacts that had quietly fallen off the bottom of the scope. His wingmen were calling fuel state on the radio every 15 seconds. 2 of them are below combat reserve already and dropping toward bingo. Bingo being fighter pilot lingo for, if I leave right now,
Bingo
I'll
and
make the
lingo.
runway. 2
Huh.
of them weren't at bingo. They were past it. The KJ-500 is asking him over the data link what he plans to do next, and he has the lead F-16 in firing position with nothing he can do about it. If
Yeah.
he takes
What?
the shot in a real engagement, he wins decisively. But he can't take it. This is a peacetime intercept in international airspace, and he has to find a graceful way to disengage before
Yes,
his wingmen
yes.
flame out trying to follow him through one more hard turn.
No,
Beijing
no.
wanted a sovereignty
give up.
demonstration, and Beijing was about to get a
Stop
fuel
it.
emergency. The lead Chinese pilot pushed his nose down 5 degrees and dropped power back to military. He started the
Oh,
energy
wow.
recovery descent, pushed the
It's
nose
like
down,
he's
let
bowing
gravity do
down.
the work, get airspeed back without burning the engine.
The
The
fuel is
J-16
running
needed
out.
altitude back, it needed airspeed back, and the descent would buy him both inside 90 seconds. Viper 1's pair caught the throttle pull on their displays and held position at 34,000 feet. They didn't pursue, didn't brake, and didn't let the Chinese formation recover energy and start the turn for home. The Americans had the J-16 lead dead to rights, and they let him
Oh.
have his energy back. Same way you let a guy at a bar finish his drink before you tell him his cab is here. The J-16 lead, recovering energy through the descent, banked slightly left to lead his wingmen back toward the Shandong coast. Outlaw 1 and Outlaw 2, sitting in his deep 6 o'clock at 36,000 feet, slid forward to keep the bearing as the Chinese formation came around. The J-16s, still recovering from the climb, were now flying directly away from a pair of F-16s they didn't know existed. The pair
Oh.
they did know about was still
Ah,
nose
yes, they
on at
didn't know.
34,000 feet, watching them turn. Whichever way the lead Chinese pilot turned next, an F-16 had him. He hadn't figured that out yet. The J-16 lead banked left toward Shandong and pushed his throttles forward into the cruise back profile. From
Back
this seat,
profile.
the engagement was ending the exact way he wanted it to end. Americans turning east, Chinese turning west, no shots fired. He was
Wow.
already drafting the after-action report in his head. Successful intercept, sovereignty maintained, foreign aircraft pushed
Wow.
back. Standard hero stuff.
Nice.
Then his number 5 called a contact off the radio in clipped Mandarin, bearing 080, range 35 kilometers, above and behind the formation. 2 F-16s at 36,000 feet, holding the same heading the Chinese formation was flying home on, from a position the J-16 radars couldn't see on any scan. Number 5 didn't see the Americans on radar at all. He saw
Oh.
them with his eyes on the canopy turn, where
Oh.
the formation banked west and put them above his right shoulder for a few seconds. 2 gray silhouettes against the yellow sea sky, holding station, watching the Chinese formation turn for home. Number 5 was the only Chinese pilot in the formation who'd been clearing his six like he'd been taught at flight school. He probably wouldn't get a medal for it.
I literally love the way they both maintained their sovereignty, and literally there were no shots fired at all, because the way it was going, I was also confused, like what is actually happening? Why are they behind? Like the F-16s are behind the J-16s, and they were like keeping an eye on each other, or what was actually happening. But anyways, the both of the jets were actually very compatible. But anyways, we all know like who's the actual king, because in the previous video I've also saw like same way where Iran jets were very close to F-16s, and what happened to them at the end? They were literally
Yeah.
like turned into ashes within few minutes.
Yeah, like US is the winner over here. And I just feel like they are just, they are waiting for someone to say yes for the war. Because I don't understand why do they do this. We have seen them, as she said, with Iran as well. So we have seen with other countries as well. What do they do in the air? Like what they want to do? Do they want to like want to start the war, or they want to do something, or are they doing this for their national headlines? Okay, this American jet did this to us and we did that. I don't understand the purpose behind that, but we know the winner. It's the USA.
Definitely. So how do you find this video? Let me know in our comment sections below. So do like, share and subscribe.
Subscribe. Bye.